Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video we'll be taking a look at the brand new Affix coming in with the next season. If you guys haven't seen a lot of the B-roll footage that I use on the channel, yes, I love me some Mythic Plus dungeons. I think they're a lot of fun. They allow dungeons to become still a usable bit of content rather than going through dungeons, gearing there, then forgetting about them completely, and the rest of your gearing system becomes from the raids. Honestly, one of the most fun things I've added in the game. It's super cool. I love how competitive it can be, and I love the different affixes that they've been trying with this BFA seasons. In this video, I want to go over what Season 4 is going to entail for anybody joining for Mythic Plus, what the extra affix is going to be, that's going to be the seasonal affix, how it'll function, and how it might impact the game. The Affix itself is not live on PTR yet, but I want to be one of the first few people covering it as soon as it's available. But before we can test it out on PTR, let's talk about everything that it means. The theme with the Mythic Plus for Season 4 is going to be Azeroth and his minions, and that's exactly what we'll be doing in Season 4 when it comes to the Azeroth Affix. We'll be fighting Azeroth's minions. So instead of allowing these minions to be among mobs, these minions themselves are actually kind of like mini bosses. The way that we know that they are activated so far is throughout the dungeon there's going to be a couple different pillars that are scattered all over the place. When you interact with the pillar, you actually get to go into the other world where this minion of Azeroth is going to be. And in that parallel world of yours, but it's a copy. In that copy, you don't get to interact with the mobs of that dungeon. The only mobs you can interact with are the minions of Azeroth. So while you're fighting these minions, you don't have to fight those minions together with the rest of the enemies of the dungeon. That means you're not gonna have a situation like Infested from Season 1 or with the current Beguiling Season 3. Pull in a bunch of pack of mobs with a minion that will buff everything around it, which might seem quite nice. Beguiling ads are quite annoying, and at lower level dungeons and with the right composition, you are able to pull the minions of Ajara with certain trash packs and cleave everything down, just absolutely nuke it. But with this affix, it's going to employ more of single target approach. Any classes that are good at outputting single target damage will have a place in a dungeon where they'll be able to use that single target to effectively deal with certain enemies, not just the bosses scattered throughout the instance. These minions of Azeroth could have a variety of different abilities, and we still to this day have no idea what they're gonna do. From the footage we have from when Blizzard unveiled the patch 3, we see that the minions of Azeroth do some sort of a green poisonish attack. They look like they're doing some sort of casting abilities. So it could be anything like just a tank is going to take a lot of damage, so everybody gotta speed nuke these things down, or maybe there'll be some sort of an interrupt rotation to stop the ad from casting spells either at the group or the tank. The interesting catch with the minions of Azeroth is that they actually can be used to skip certain parts of the dungeon like you would with a rogue using a shroud. These minions of Azeroth, once you open the portal to fight them, it'll spawn a portal on one end. The other portal, the exit portal, is going to be wherever this minion of Azeroth dies. This means, and we'll use the example from 8.3, that you can open up the portal on one side wherever it may be, and while you're fighting the boss, you're also using that time to skip whatever trash pack you need. Just make sure that when you kill this mini boss, the minion of Azeroth, that you're not spawning your group in front of like a bunch of guards that will attack you as soon as you come out of the portal. So in a sense, you can utilize the boss fight in order to use it while fighting this boss to skip a certain part of the dungeon. This means that if a group decided not to bring a rogue into the Mythic Plus dungeon and rather would bring a couple of buddies that don't play a rogue, now you can use these minions of Azeroth and the fight that you would do in the parallel dungeon world to use it at the same time as a fight but also as a skip. So this would allow groups to not be forced to bring a rogue, which is quite nice. Rogues have been pretty much the meta. Having at least one rogue per group has been almost mandatory. The ability for Shroud is just way too good. The rogue itself is also a great class with great survivability, great damage, great utility, but that Shroud on top of all of that is just icing on the cake. But the seasonal affix isn't going to be all sunshine and rainbows. There is going to be a bit of a drawback. You see, if these obelisks are up when you're doing the final boss, those mini bosses might pay you a visit as you're doing the final boss of the dungeon. Safe to say that those guys are going to be pretty scary to do together with a boss. There might be some instances where you do want to pull them together with the boss. For example, the final boss of Freehold, Harlan Sweetie, doesn't really do a lot. The guy himself is just fairly easy boss to deal with. He doesn't have a lot of mechanics, so you could pull those mini bosses, granted if they are somewhat easy to manage, cleave them down with the final boss with Bloodlust, and you could be quite efficient as a group in order to take everybody down all in a single blow. First of all, I kind of love the amount of different strategies that could come out from this knowledge and how various different groups are going to try to deal with this affix if they do decide to deal with a mini boss together with the final boss. It's super exciting to think of the possibilities. But for your average Joe, that means you probably want to kill these mini bosses before you do the final end boss of the dungeon. The thing is that I noticed these obelisks, the entrances where you'd go and fight these mini bosses, can be put in awkward locations. Like in Dalaran, the trash bag that you're seeing right here on the screen, nobody ever does it. This is a little bit off to the side of that boss that is all about totems. You know, you gotta kill the totems before you can start killing the boss himself. Normally he's the second boss of the dungeon that everybody ends up going for. That guy and that zone and the mobs around that obelisk are not fun to deal with. So most people skip out on that trash bag, but now it seems like with these obelisks, you might be forced to kill trash bags that you never would do before. That also means you gotta plan around which mobs you want to kill, which ones you don't want to kill, which is gonna shake up the meta quite a bit and shake up the strategy. One thing that I hope that this affix is though, however, is that it's an easier affix. I think seasonal affixes should be more fun, like Reaping. Reaping was a blast, a lot of people loved it. Yeah, it created a meta where people mostly brought Outlaw for the AoE damage, but imagine if they were to bring in Reaping with us having all our essences. No matter what class you are, you could easily slot in the laser beam essence, and bam, as soon as the Reaping adds crowd together, you could just blast them all with the laser beam from your necklace. It wasn't a difficult seasonal. Reaping was quite fun. It was challenging if you weren't prepared for it, but it didn't impede in your progress for the dungeon, and you kind of got to control it in some way or another. Beguiling, on the other hand, it is a lot more challenging of an affix, but and more than challenging, I would say it's a lot more tedious. In the end, it comes down to having cooldowns in order to deal with a void, having somebody to boop the booper ad, or maybe a healer to root them, stun them, whatever ability you got to control them from a distance. And of course, there's also the tides. This one you either nuke down and cleave it with the rest, or you hit it with a root from a druid, pulling enemies back away from it so you can finally interrupt them. And you have to find a way to deal around every single trash bag every single week in a different manner. Even back in patch 8.2, Blizzard did have some sort of a bare bones system to give you a buff every time you slay one of those void ads or the beguiling ads or the tide ads. Every time you slay one of the beguiling NPCs, it is supposed to grant the party some sort of a buff for a short moment. That to me would have been a cool way of, hey, I'll tackle on this difficult or annoying or hard challenge, but then for a short moment of time the dungeon is going to be slightly easier. I feel like that would have been a lot more fun of a mechanic and a concept, but then they scrapped it before it came out for patch 8.2. If I had to make a choice whether I want this next affix to be easier and maybe a fun affix, maybe an interesting affix, or a very tedious, very challenging affix on its own, I would err on the side of fun and interesting. Mythic pluses on their own get harder and harder in scaling every time you climb a higher and a higher and a higher key. So if somebody does want a challenge out of a Mythic plus, I feel like going for the higher key level should be the way to go, instead of making affixes that are super punishing to deal with and in some cases can be super unfun to play around with. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I gotta check out PTR to see if this affix is currently available, or if it's not available right now, I should be able to log on PTR as soon as it's up to show you guys exactly what it looks like. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.